Professional School Counselors as Consultants by MHill. First of all, what is consulting? Well, according to Dr. Mary Gresham, quote, consulting is the service you seek to answer a specific problem using the expert knowledge of a professional, end quote. Consulting typically involves a specific problem or particular topic of interest to the client. For example, a classroom teacher may approach the school counselor about an existing problem, such as behavior management. In this case, the counselor would act as a consultant and may observe the in-class learning experience in order to help the classroom teacher develop and implement an effective behavior management plan. Consulting is usually short-term rather than long-term, and clientele can be wide-ranging, including organizations, individuals, groups, families, teachers, and administrators. What is the difference between a consulting role and a counseling role? Let's start with the consulting role. When acting as a consultant, the professional school counselor addresses a specific topic or problem on which he or she is an expert. He or she may also occasionally provide training and teaching. When acting as a consultant, the professional school counselor builds rapport with businesses, organizations, groups, families, individuals, teachers, and administrators. Most importantly, he or she must be trustworthy, compassionate, approachable, personable, knowledgeable, and professional. The counseling role places emphasis on relieving a client's distress. A myriad of methods exist for accomplishing this objective, one of which consists of teaching coping skills. When fulfilling the counseling role, the professional school counselor discusses adaptation skills, actions, and behaviors that will minimize the client's distress. The counselor must form a one-on-one relationship with the client. And just as when consulting, he or she must exhibit certain key virtues. Consulting modes. According to Dr. Stanley Baker and colleagues, there are 5 consulting modes. Recall the example I described earlier in which a classroom teacher approaches the school counselor about an existing problem with behavior management. In this case, the counselor may observe the in-class learning experience and apply his or her knowledge of the relevant research in order to help the classroom teacher develop and implement an effective behavior management plan. This is an example of a counselor in the prescription mode. Continuing with the example, if the classroom teacher was unable or unwilling to implement the behavior management plan him or herself, the counselor might directly engage with the student and implement the plan. In this sort of situation, the counselor would be in the provision mode. A variation of the current example will help illustrate the initiation mode. If the counselor notices the behavior problem but the teacher hasn't reached out to the counselor may be in the initiation mode. In this sort of situation, the counselor would approach the teacher about engaging in consultation concerning the behavior issue. When in the collaboration mode, the counselor works alongside with the person that he or she is consulting in order to try to find the best solution to the problem. In the example under discussion, the counselor would be in this mode if he or she was working collaboratively with the teacher in developing the behavior management plan. The mediation mode occurs when the counselor helps to resolve a dispute between 2 or more parties. For example, if the teacher in the example that I have used to illustrate the other modes were to be in a disagreement with the student's parents about how to handle the student's misbehavior, the counselor may be in the mediation mode when he or she tries to resolve the dispute between the teacher and the parents. Approaches to consulting. Although Dr. Baker and colleagues claim that there are 5 modes of consulting, according to Dr. Robert Wright, there are 4 approaches to consulting. Despite the apparent difference here, the picture that Baker and colleagues and Wright each provide of consulting is essentially the same. They are simply dividing the activities of counselors as consultants in slightly different ways, but they still acknowledge the same activities. Effectively addressing issues as children continue to evolve. Society is constantly changing. Thus, it is no surprise that children continue to change with it, sometimes at a rate that can seem almost alarming. In order to be effective in consultations, professional school counselors must stay abreast of the evolution of children. For instance, a counselor should routinely assess the needs of students, allow the individual needs of students to guide consultation, adapt consulting modes according to changes in students' social norms, and modify implementation and communication of specialized education programs involved in the consulting process. When consulting, professional school counselors must remain cognizant of ethical and legal concerns. Ethical issues. Ethical issues can arise from the consultant's own values in two ways. First, the consultant might impose his or her values onto the consultee. Second, the consultant may be so concerned with not imposing his or her values that consultation is ineffective. According to MHill Doherty, the best way to handle this is a middle ground where the counselor is aware of his or her values, but commits to not imposing them and proceeds as best he or she can. Consultant competency simply concerns how well the consultant is actually able to perform what is needed in the consultation. Ethical issues can arise from the nature of the consultant-consultee client relationship. The best way to handle these is for the consultation to be focused solely on work-related issues. For example, the counselor should avoid discussing personal issues with an administrator with whom he or she is consulting. Doherty recommends establishing clear, well-defined, mutually agreed upon expectations for the consultation. When it comes to the rights of consultees, the counselor should respect the consultee's freedom of choice. He or she should allow the consultee to evaluate the effectiveness of the consultation, and the counselor should be careful not to use persuasion to keep the consultation going. In essence, the consultant should let the consultee decide for him or herself whether to continue with the consultation. Basically, the consultee has a right to informed consent when it comes to consultation. An additional right of consultees is that consultations be kept confidential. Confidentiality is particularly important in school settings where information might be easily but inappropriately shared. Legal duties. Confidentiality should be kept in most cases, and failure to do so could lead to legal problems for the counselor. However, there are cases where the counselor may be required by law to break confidentiality, such as when he or she knows that a consultee is a threat to an identifiable person. In many cases, the communication between a professional school counselor and his or her consultee is considered privileged. Nonetheless, there may be instances where the counselor is required by law to disclose these communications. This is often the case when counselors are required to testify in cases of child abuse. Like other educators, school counselors have legal duties when it comes to student records. These records are to be kept strictly confidential except under particular circumstances. Of course, just like researchers in any other context, school counselors have legal obligations to protect students' privacy when they are subjects of the counselor's research. They also have these sorts of legal obligations when students are being exposed to experimental treatment programs, such as when a counselor proposes an experimental program to help with student misbehavior. When it comes to child abuse, school counselors, like other educators, are bound by law to report instances of suspected child abuse to the proper authorities. Finally, professional school counselors also face a variety of legal issues when it comes to testing students' proficiencies on various tasks. These issues are particularly salient when it comes to trying to get students placed in special education. One of the benefits of the information in this presentation is facilitating a better understanding of the various modes of consultation. This improved understanding of the different modes may help professional school counselors better assist their consultees. Another benefit of this presentation is gaining awareness of ethical issues in consultation. Increased awareness of these issues can help the counselor perform his or her consultation duties in a morally upstanding manner. An additional benefit is enhanced awareness of legal issues in consultation. This can help the counselor to avoid legal trouble for both him or herself and his or her institution. It is particularly important that counselors recognize, as this video helps to show, that while they sometimes go hand in hand, ethical and legal issues are not the same. It is for this reason that one might be acting in an ethical manner and yet fail to fulfill all of his or her legal duties. Thank you for watching.